Mr. Ope, the next slide, please, for the ground rules. All right. So, I just want to set some ground rules for this meeting so we are able to have an awesome and no interruption free meeting. Right, so all mics will be muted upon entry into the meeting, and please ensure that your mic stays muted, and also please use your name or your organization when logged in, and please use the chat box for your question and comments. Thank you. Okay, to keep the ball rolling, I'm going to invite the Director General, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyorinde, for his opening remarks. Thank you. DG sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tommy, and good morning, everybody. It's our pleasure to have you join us for this very important conversation. As we are all aware, SME and MSMEs are basically the powerhouse of any economy. If we have not given it that kind of, or given that group that kind of attention, it's because of the contradictions that we have in our economy or the contradictions in our environment. But we believe strongly that MSME and SMEs are the economic drivers. They employ the greatest number of staff. They operate significantly, even in the informal sector. And our commitment to continue to formalize or assist those in the informal sector to be formalized is quite absolute. Our commitment to your businesses as MSME, SMEs, and to continually support you with capacity building, with relevant information, both locally and internationally from the International Labour Organization, is also absolute. So for the MSME and SMEs here, NECA is your go-to organization. We also want to thank our partners, SMEDAN, that has been very committed also to the development of SMEs and MSMEs in Nigeria, ITF, and many other organizations, LRS, FRS, and every other agency, ministry, department, and agencies that have shown commitment to the growth of the MSME group. I think we also want to thank you. This conversation will not end here. It will continue progressively. We're also planning very soon. Good morning, Mr. Tijani. Thank you for joining us. We're also planning before the end of the year to organize a major SME clinic in the southeast, in Enugu, using Enugu as a base. A major physical SME clinic where we definitively showcase the strength of the MSME in the southeast, definitively get commitment from all stakeholders, from government, from the business community, from donor agencies, commitment to drive this conversation about development of SME and MSME with us. It's a commitment that we have made. It's a commitment that we'll continue to make towards the development of this country, because we don't have, if many people are still jackpotting, for many of us, the commitment to build this country remains very absolute. So I want to thank everybody that have joined us. It's a very germane topic, regulatory compliance. As the environment becomes tense, as things become charged, regulators are also bracing up to continue to regulate. And our position has been that regulators must regulate to drive growth. Regulations must not be focused on punishment, or regulations must not be focused strictly on revenue generation. It must be to drive growth. And that is the way we think this country can actually grow. We were in a conversation yesterday, and it was quite saddening. A group of companies, they have six companies in the group about 7 years ago. And progressively, as at last year, there are now only 3 companies, or 2.5. Three of the companies in the group, they've closed shop. And the question I asked the MD in our conversation was, look, we can see the physical structure. We can see we can see the physical structure that is empty. We can see the investors that have left. But what of the staff? Those 3 companies that closed shop, they have staff. Now, those people have become the unknown Nigerians, because they are also critical economic players. Their capacity to pay rent, their capacity to pay school fees, their capacity to maintain their household has been compromised. And none of us, we are not connecting with that reality. And in the conversation, regulation and regulators are part of the things that drove those 3 businesses out of existence. And we have committed to continue to engage regulators so that we can all build consensus towards building the economy, building the MSME, SME ecosystem for the betterment of all of us as Nigerians. So you are welcome once again, and I'm also looking forward to very incisive engagement in the course of this conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, and I'll hand over back to Tomi. Tomi, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dikisa. Next on the agenda would be the reading of the citation, and I would have Mr. Tochukwu Apa to do that. Mr. Tochukwu, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, DG. You're welcome, our great participants. I would like to, without further ado, call out our able speakers, beginning with Dr. Kelechi beginning with Dr. Kelechi Ohiru, the Director General, National Health Insurance Authority, NHIA. He is represented by Mr. Ajodi Nuhu Nasser. Mr. Ajodi Nuhu Nasser holds various positions at the headquarters, zonal and state offices of NHIA, contributing in no small measure to the overall development of the authority and its march towards attaining universal health coverage in Nigeria. He is the director of the former sector department of the National Health Insurance Authority currently. Mr. Ajodi, we welcome you to this very significant occasion. Our second speaker is
Thank you very much.
Mr. Segun Nasiru Tijani, BSc. Mr. Segun Tijani is representing Mr. Ayodele Sunair, the Executive Chairman, Lagos Inland Revenue Service, LIRS. He is a certified tax professional and member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. He's passionate about tax revenue management, strategic marketing concepts, cognitive and emotional intelligence, stakeholders collaboration, and people management skills. Mr. Tijani is currently an assistant director, regional director, Victoria Island region of LIRS, with 7 tax stations reporting to his office. Mr. Shegu, we welcome you to this occasion. Our third participant is our third speaker is Dr.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Our third speaker is Dr. Vincent Olatunji. Dr. Olatunji is the National Commissioner, National Data Protection Commission. He is recognized for his contribution to the digital economy and holds multiple certifications and professional membership, among which are International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP, Institute of Information Technology Management, FIIM, among others. In February 2022, he became the pioneer national commissioner, stroke CEO of the Nigeria Data Protection Bureau, which later transitioned to the Nigerian Data Protection Commission. Dr. Latunji was appointed the National Commissioner of the National Data Protection Commission on the 11th of October 2023 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. Doctor, we welcome you to this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Tochukwu. So to set the ball rolling, we'll be having with the topic complying with the National Health Insurance Authority, NHIA, the why and how. We'll be having the representative of Dr. Kelechi Ohiri, Director General, NHIA. We welcome Mr. Ajadi Nuhu Nasir Losa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm trying to share my page with you.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah.
All right.
I want to project just a minute, please.
All right.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to seize the opportunity to thank the organizers of this program and also the participants that have joined. Thank you very much for the privilege to be here. I'm representing Dr. Kelechi Ohiri, the Director General and Chief Executive Officer of National Health Insurance Authority. The topic given to us is complying with the National Health Insurance Authority, NHI, the why, and the how. Well, my presentation outline, as you can see in the screen, I'll give you a background, give introduction to EAC universal health coverage, the context for the law of NHI, the context for the law for NHI's law, from where we derived our regulatory powers, of course, the why, based on the topic given, the how, and implication to stakeholders, and then I will summarize and conclude the presentation. As we are all aware, health is very important. So human welfare lies essentially on human health, on improving health. And so no nation jokes with citizens' well-being. So that's why nations across the globe, including Nigeria, give priority to the health sector. Universal health coverage is an agenda, global agenda, and if you dovetail that specifically to SDG 2, that's Sustainable Development Goal 3.8, which encourages every nation to achieve universal health coverage, including financial risk protection, access to quality, essential healthcare services, and access to safe and effective quality care and affordable essential medicines and vaccines. We pride ourselves as an organization to say that we provide qualitative and affordable healthcare services through our various stakeholders to the enrollees. UH, therefore, we definitely help in reducing extreme poverty in the nation, because like it's always said, even a healthy human being just one sickness away from poverty, especially if it's a terminal ailment or a very serious disease. So it is very important that we have insurance coverage for everyone to reduce their poverty. Countries need to achieve this, need to have a financing system in place. And that is why In most countries today, health insurance is the way to go, where you have mechanism to pool resources together, and then using that resources you have pooled, to purchase healthcare for the citizens in a strategic manner. Now, how has journey been thus far as an organization? Well, the NHIS, as it were then, in 1999 was midwifed by a decree signed into law by the then president, which gave us the power to exist as an organization and to provide health insurance coverage for all Nigerians. Of course, the formal launching was done in 2005, where the then president gave a marching order that NHI should provide universal health coverage by 2015 for all Nigerians. It was a tall order, even though then we are less than, we are I think about 150 or so thereabouts in population. You can imagine providing healthcare cover, health insurance cover for that population is much. But of course, we have to start from somewhere. We begin cover with what we call the low-hanging fruits, the public sector. In a few months, we're able to log in, put all the federal government workers on board into health insurance cover. And we also tried to bring in the state health insurance then on board. And 2 states, of course, then joined. We had the Cross River State and the Bauchi State. But at that point, there was no legal framework to bring them on board. So, of course, by the time you have a change of regime, the new government refused to continue with the implementation of health insurance in their various countries. And that we learned a lesson from that for you to have health insurance agency or structure, you must have a legal framework. And we began to do that to see how we can bring on board the subnationals to be a major actor in health insurance implementation. Well, that continued for a while, tried through advocacies to get their political buy-in. Then sitting there on the health sector, by 2019, 2023, the then Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Sage, unveiled the Health Next Level agenda, where they try to close in the gap in the health sector, in the health-related gaps in the health sector, as much as by 60% through implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I mentioned earlier, which is SDG 3.8. That saw the operationalization of the basic care provision fund, and the part of the condition that was that for the states to be able to implement that program, they must have state health insurance agency. And so that helped us to catalyze, or rather, if you like, cascade the health insurance implementation to the subnational. And that brings a lot of life between that 2020, 2021, 2023. Yeah, and so today as we speak, in the health insurance ecosystem, coverage is announced recently by the Director General, Dr. Kelechi Ohiri of NHI. It's roughly over 18 million naira now. In Nigeria. Well, in 2022, there was a major development where NHI Act was, the former one, NHI Act was repealed. Then we had the new Act, NHI Act 2022. And with this came a lot of changes and responsibility in our roles as a regulator. And I will unveil that as we tag along with this presentation. Of course, in the health insurance palace, you are doing some basic things. We are, like I've explained earlier, we are trying to ensure that there is universal health coverage for all Nigerians. How are you going to do that? Well, you have to raise funds. There must be revenue generation. And of course, in doing that, there are various ways you can do that. I will also give details of that as we tag along. But essentially, generally, what is done is like either to ensure that the resources you have, ensure that you collect revenue in an efficient manner. You must have a platform to do that. Then general government health expenditure. We are all aware of Abuja declarations of 2021, where OAU recommended 15% budgetary allocation of every nation to be allocated to the health sector. It's still a far cry, even as a nation, from that target. I think we are below 5% now, or about 4.6 or thereabout even this year. But it was recommended that that is the way to go. And of course, that there must be improved efficiency and equity. And how are you going to do that? By using strategic purchasing method, not passively. And you know that in health insurance, a game of number. So you have that bargaining power to negotiate with your stakeholders to crash the health costs, because they are guaranteed the number anyway to provide health care for them. And so another leg to that is that you should be able to remove financial risk barriers, ensure that your population is protected from catastrophic health expenditure. And how are you going to do that? There must be a risk pooling through various means. I will build a prepayment system. Is also it's usually recommended. You also have mandatory health insurance, but prior to now we had insurance implementation in Nigeria as a law, but it was not mandatory, and that created chaos within the health insurance ecosystem. So moving forward, government realized that, of course, just like in every nation, there must be a strong national and local political leadership to back implementation of UAC in any nation. It's a journey anyway, not a destination. I'm having challenge with this. Okay. Now, when you talk about UAC, this box illustrates a lot there. There are 3 parameters there, essentially. You have population coverage, you have the benefit package for your enrollees, and you have the cost of care. The blue box inside the white box represent the amount of funds that you have. So if you have more money, you are able to provide all this effectively. But if you don't have, let's use the example that is in that box now. The amount of pool that we have can only cover certain population, right? And that you can't go beyond that, except you are able to increase your revenue generation. And it can also cover only certain benefits and be able to cover the costs based on the amount of money you have. So those are the dimensions of UAC. So in health insurance parlance, there is always need to innovatively raise funds. As pool revenue generation is very critical in the implementation of health insurance. I just use that as an example for understanding. Now, what's the context of the NHIA law for us to be able to function effectively as a regulatory organization? Prior to having health insurance scheme, as it were, the National Health Insurance Scheme, even during that period, there was kind of chaos within the system for various reasons, because it was non-mandatory. That means that you cannot even compel anybody. The states cannot even bring them on board. So we have to devise a means to mitigate that challenge, to circumvent the challenge that we have at the national level by advocating that the states can come on board and establish state health insurance agency, but let their laws at the state level be mandatory. While we work at the national level to ensure that, the law that we had at that time is kind of amended to reflect mandatory nature that is recommended for you to have an effective health insurance implementation in the country. So we had that challenge. I mean, it was pervasive. It was just a chaotic situation. Politically too, it was the same thing, because if you look at it really, so that means you are not able to even implement to meet the needs of SDG 3.8 that I explained earlier on. So politically, we have 3 tiers of government, and the health is not in exclusive list. That means that each of these tiers can regulate on can have their policies, right, in a health sector. So there are no harmonized policies in driving the healthcare system in the country. Of course, government can only provide what it has anyway, because there are competing needs. That's also created a problem in the system. I've said the Health Insurance Act then was not mandatory. And of course, we have high poverty level that further fuel the chaotic nature in the country. So less people are coming on board health insurance. Equity concern, that means it's only those who can afford that can pick contribution. We either take private insurance for themselves, those who are working for government, or employers who are robust enough to buy health insurance for their employees. And so there must be an institutional framework that can kind of checkmate some of these things. Now, the health financing in the system, in a way, I've mentioned some of that too. But then generally in raising money to finance health insurance, healthcare financing, there are several ways, there are several mechanisms that you can use to do that. Somehow I mentioned that in the introduction, that you must pull revenue. You must generate revenue, you pull, and then you purchase strategically. That gives you a lot of advantage if we're able to do that. So various sources of revenue, it can be through tax system. We're all aware of the system that is obtainable in UK. NHS, for example, is tax system. They're able to raise larger revenue, where everybody through tax contribute to the same pool. But in our own case, it's through health insurance, right? Social health insurance, which although mandatory, it doesn't mean that it's mandatory. You are going to take care to chase people on the street. It just simply means that you have to enforce its implementation innovatively through use of social services by government and so on and so on, and collaboration with institutions such as NECA that have large affiliates working with them. You know, if that collaboration is deepened, it will even help in enforcing this, as you know, in the course of health insurance implementation. And we pull, I've mentioned all that. I have short time, so I have to tag along. Then why, based on the topic you give us, do we have to regulate? Our law speaks to that. Pointed out clearly, and I will unveil that to us now. Now, I mentioned earlier that the law said that we must promote, regulate, and integrate health insurance. Our promotion function, liken it to what the CBN does for the commercial banks. They promote the finance sector, right? And all that. They control, they are in charge of the monetary policy for Nigeria. So in a way, NHI is to do that for the health insurance ecosystem, promote health insurance uptake in Nigeria, promote its implementation, and also regulate the activities of the stakeholders generally, whether major or minor, so that there will be no chaos within the system, and then integrate, leveraging on ICT, data and so on and so forth. And that will simply means that the implication of that you are able to expand the coverage if you have a sanitized system. And that's private sector participation. If you look at NHIS, it's based on 3 types of PPP, public-private partnership. And so we will have to analyze even the public sector, the private providers, as major stakeholders. And if you are able to do that, some of them, because you are able to give them the number, the patients, which can sustain them. And we are all beginning to see that now in the ecosystem, where you see people going into the rural areas or semi-urban areas to even establish facilities to provide cover for enrollees. Then we are also to carry out innovative actions to achieve UAC. And that is also so further to accelerate our journey towards a universal coverage for Nigeria. How are you going to do that? Well, through several means. It can be advocacy to raise more money for the ecosystem. We're already doing that. Recently, you have heard, it was in the news for the VVF, for the fistula program that NHI is currently implementing. That money came in through certain source for the ecosystem, and to cover our reproductive mothers within the system who may have challenge because of birth. So that has taken off. I think that started about 2 months ago, in addition to several others. Now, the law has enabled NHIs to do certain things, and I'll also give details. But essentially, in terms of governance, what the law has enabled us to do is to ensure that we are able to, one, even the pre-plans, right, has to be approved by the NHI as part of our regulatory function. And we provide that governance for that. And also, we review tariffs, right, for the schemes that we run currently every 3 years because of the international trends within the country. We must have all observed that in the last few months, it's been easy. I think that is what has been necessitated the ongoing the strike that the nation experienced last week or so. Then in terms of data exchange and relevant agency bodies that are operating with the system, we have to ensure that there's harmony within that system. We have to ensure that we develop manpower, not just internally, but across the ecosystem. And we do that anyway, in terms of capacity building. Then develop operational guidelines to guide the system for these major stakeholders. And we also provide oversight function for the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which that was operational from National Act. You know, that funding comes 1% of consolidated revenue of Nigeria goes directly into that fund. And currently, the money for the health insurance pathway, that's about 50% of that comes through NHIA, which is now disbursed to the states to use it to cover for the vulnerable population in their states. And that's also ongoing. So we provide oversight for that. We regulate. And I mentioned that earlier on, but just to give one or two examples, as you can see on your screen, that one is that even for pre-planned for plans for health insurance, private health insurance, NHS must what's it called? Must approve it. We approve the formats. So generally, we regulate the health insurance. I've explained that. I don't need to waste much time. Then we also enforce. We have to enforce the mandatory health insurance, and of course, we are going to do this collaboratively with the stakeholders such as NECA, our colleagues at the subnational, and so on and so forth. And then we have to integrate. I mentioned that earlier on, and we are also to promote health insurance uptake in Nigeria. Integration, like I said earlier, we are going to leverage on ICT platform to be able to have a seamless data exchange, right? And also to ensure that the coverage of Nigeria, we're able to report that nationally, where the states can report coverage for their states. Now, in health insurance, given that there is types of health insurance. Sorry, something covered my screen. Just to give clarity to what I'm talking about when it comes to it, you have the mandatory health insurance, which will be contributory or what? Supplementary or subsidy. Contributing in the sense that those who are able to pay should what? Pay. Those who cannot pay, you can't leave them behind, because UAC is to ensure that there is equity within the system, while also ensuring that there is qualitative health care for all citizens. So those who cannot afford, the very vulnerable, the states should be able to provide that. And that's why you have the basic health care provision for at the national level, and the money trickle down to the state. And at the state level, even there are laws. You have what you call, what's it called? You have a equity fund within their law, within the legal framework, that ensure that the states must also contribute either a certain percentage of their consolidated revenue, into for the coverage of the vulnerable. For the private health insurance, essentially we'll see that later. But the private health insurance, hitherto before the new law, they were providing even primary health insurance, right? Care for primary health services. But with the new law, that has kind of reduced that a bit. They are not to do that, but they are to provide supplementary health insurance. That is the services that are not covered by the social health insurance, or provide complementary insurance in such a way that where you have co-payment and so on, or exclusion, right? They can have that covered through complementary health insurance, and the HMOs are empowered to do that by the law. That is just, this slide is just to further explain what I've just explained, Then the way, in terms of, we regulate in terms of roles and responsibility of stakeholders. When you see the roles and responsibility of the stakeholder, then we'll be able to see clearly what we do and what we regulate, essentially. So now, employers and employees, and I think NECA and its affiliates are also involved here, and government agencies. They have to ensure, based on the new law, to say that all employers of the public or private sectors, with at least minimum of 5 employees, before the previous law used to be 10 and above. But does this mean that those that have below 5 should not be covered with health insurance? No, that's not what it means. It just means that when you are 5 and above, you can join certain program of the NHIA or the state health insurance agency. But if it's below, whether it's 2 or 1, there's a platform for them also to enjoy the same benefit, no discrimination. They are just a categorization based on platform for them to, as entrants into the health insurance ecosystem. So all employees of the informal sector are required to obtain health insurance, and all residents, legal residents, apart from the citizens in Nigeria, are also to ensure that they have health insurance cover. And we are beginning to see uptake even from the embassies now, who are logging into health insurance, our scheme to provide cover for their staffs in Nigeria. What is the implication of that? Essentially, it just means that health insurance is mandatory in Nigeria, and so everybody must come on board, and it's for the benefit of all. It is an offense not to have health insurance in Nigeria, and this will be enforced in no time. In no time, once the modalities are unveiled and the populace is properly sensitized. NHI, in playing his role as a regulator, as a promoter, and as an integrator, we have roles which we have to enlighten the stakeholders. We are to, as an organization, provide strong leadership and governance in the overall health insurance ecosystem. Like I said earlier, we are to regulate, we are to enforce compliance. And of course, because Nigeria is such a large place, we delegate some of our function, if need be, through collaboration with the state health insurance agencies to do this effectively. And of course, we have to establish a scheme, which we are already doing, to cover the federal civil servant. All the federal civil servants in Nigeria, you can see we always say they are 99% cover, except new employees that have come on board. And even as they come on board, we'll do what we call mop-up enrollment for them, come on board health insurance platform. So the implication is that as an organization, we must position ourselves. I'm glad to announce that the Director General who came on board a few months ago, Dr. Kelechi Ohiri, is currently re-engineering the system, trying to reorganize the system. I think that was even put in public demo by the Honorable Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Services, Professor Patti. And so we need a structure that can be able to, regulate the operation of health insurance in Nigeria. And then it's also been able to carry out robust, stakeholders engagement. In fact, the first few weeks he came on board, that was what he did, to meet with the major stakeholders, having met with the internal stakeholders, to unveil his agenda for the health insurance ecosystem in Nigeria. And then, of course, the implication is that we are saddled with the responsibility to develop guidelines for operationalizing the new law. That we did with the emergence of some, based on implementation. That guideline, as we speak, is currently being reviewed and will be unveiled further to further be able to enable us to regulate the ecosystem effectively. Now, next is the shares. That is our colleagues at the state level. They also have their roles and then the implication. The roles kind of mirror what we do essentially. They have to implement health insurance coverage in their respective states, right? And they are also to provide, in doing that, basic minimum package of care. They cannot go below that, and that is usually provided. That template is provided by the coordinating health and social services. Nobody can go below that in Nigeria. That minimum basic minimum package. And they are also to provide the health insurance coverage for the vulnerable. How are they going to do that? I've explained that earlier through the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. That funding derives its source from the consolidated revenue. I've explained that earlier. And of course, they have to use HMO. The new law, if they so wish, they can give them the law. Whatever services they want them to help them carry out. It's either to sensitize, to mobilize, to help them collect a contribution, and so on and so forth. Okay. So they are also to integrate data, ensure that there is data integration between us through the platform that has been established by the NHIA. We call it eNHIA. And they are to receive contribution from the formal and informal sector employees in the respective states based on agreed matrix of coverage. So it is we've divided this matrix of coverage so that there is no conflict. I'll just give a simple example here. If you look at the tertiary institutions, the tertiary institution within a state, the state health insurance agencies are to cover. While at the national level, for now, what we do is that the tertiary institutions that belong to the federal government NHI scheme we cover. So those matrix of coverage have been defined and agreed by the stakeholders. What's the responsibility for them? Is that, of course, the implication of that is that we must deepen our collaborations, and we have a platform in doing that, what we call health insurance under one roof. We must also, they must also, together with us, ensure that they develop mechanisms for compliance with mandatory health insurance. I mentioned that earlier on, that even in terms of our regulatory function, we see some for them to do for us, just for us to have a sanitized system. And then they can employ TPAs, which we must accredit for them. And HMOs too. The law does not allow them to do. The law as it were today in Nigeria is NHIA that is to accredit HMOs, health maintenance organizations, third-party administrators, that's what TPAs means, and then air care providers. Those are the facilities, hospitals, clinics, and so on, that provide the services for the enrollees, that's Nigerians. The HMOs, they also have their roles. And okay, so time is go. The HMOs have their roles and their implications, what they do. I've mentioned some of that because of time. I have to round up. They need to up their game to ensure that they meet the prescribed rules and regulation based on our guidelines. ACPs also, they provide service care. They are essentially to make sure that they provide the quality care to the enrollees, right? At whatever level, whether primary, secondary, or tertiary. And for them to be able to provide, they should have quality improvement plan within their system. And this means that they also, the implications that they must automate their system, and they also ensure that the malpractice is limited, and they must also have indemnity for their professionals, indemnity insurance for their professionals. Finally, the TPAs, where their rules mirror that of HMOs, health maintenance organizations, and it has implication. By way of summary, in our regulatory function, the new law has enabled us. With the new laws, we are changing nomenclature from NHIS to National Health Insurance Scheme to National Health Insurance Authority. Well, it used to be the chief executive used to be executive secretary, is now director general and chief executive. But then the law is now mandatory. That's a key feature of that law. And also the law empowers NHIS to promote, regulate, and integrate health insurance in Nigeria, and also to provide cover for the vulnerable through the various means I've explained earlier. And we are to also mainstream health insurance, at the states. That we have successfully done, because almost all the states have now what you call state health insurance agency. And of course, to modify the operations if need arises. And I will leave you with these parting words. I'm quoting Dr. Oyiri now. This he unveiled when he came on board as his policy for expanding coverage for Nigerians, where he said he would like to expand coverage, improving equality, quality, and market efficiency, driving citizen-centered engagement, using data technology to improve healthcare availability, and optimizing organizational health and structure. So through data, you are able to make informed decisions to ensure that the changes or the policies you are rolling out is evidence-based, so that we can have a well-sanitized and well-sustainable health insurance ecosystem. I would like to thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nasir, for your presentation. You had made mention of the fact that universal health coverage is now mandatory, and these relevant stakeholders that are going to work together to achieve universal health coverage. So we want to tell you, please stay on the call. At the end of the session where the speakers speak, there's going to be an interactive section. So please implore you to stay on the call. Thank you. Thank you very much again for your presentation. It was very insightful, and it addressed the topic. Thank you very much, Mr. Nasir. So you could please stop screen so we move to the next. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we are going to get the representation representative of the Lagos Internal Revenue Service, representing Mr. Ayodele Subaru, who is the executive chairman of LRS, and is being represented by Mr. Segun Nasir Tijani, who will be talking about complying with tax regulations, the why and how. Tijani, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. The moderator and everybody in the program today. Yeah, my name is Segun Tijani, as rightly introduced, and I'm in a representative capacity to the executive chairman, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. And the topic is complying with tax regulations, the why and how. Okay, next slide, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Tijani. You're echoing. I have more than one device. Could you please mute the other one?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm fine. Sorry, please. On the screen is the general outline of what we are going to be talking about today, and we'll start with the introduction, then the why comply with tax regulations, understanding tax obligations, how to comply with tax obligations, benefit of timely filing and payment, leveraging technology, conclusion, then we have the question and answer session, as you rightly mentioned. So we can go to the next slide, please. So, introduction. Now, complying with tax regulations is essential for individuals and their businesses to ensure legal and financial stability. Adhering to tax laws involves understanding and strict adherence to the rules set forth by tax authorities, accurately reporting income, claiming appropriate deductions, and prompt payment of taxes. Well, that's the general outline of what the law actually provides, because tax by itself is a statutory responsibilities which is enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. While the focus of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service is to collect taxes from individuals who are resident in the state, organizations who act as agents to the government for collections, and equally non-resident individuals also who have one source of income or the other in Nigeria. So that's the general outlook of what we do. Well, compliance by itself, it helps to avoid payment of penalties, interest, and legal issues, while contributing to public services and infrastructural development within the state. Staying informed about tax obligations, maintaining proper and thorough records, and seeking professional advice when needed are key practices for meeting tax responsibilities effectively. And what this simply connotes is that the cost of compliance is usually lower than when there is non-compliance, and you can avoid all the issues surrounding penalties, demand notices, interest payments, and also ultimately the legal issues that are enshrined in the law with regards to tax disputes. So we can go to the next slide, please. So why comply with tax regulations? When you comply fully with the regulations of the tax law, you avoid legal implications. Your reputation and your trust, which is what the general public see as who you are and what you represent, are kept intact. You know, there are financial benefits as non-compliance becomes a drain on the resources of the business. Equally, there are economic contributions when you comply, because you are not in any way impacted negatively by payment of penalties and interest payments and what have you, then also avoiding penalty payments. So we can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what's the legal implications of tax payment? Now, Section 24F of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, provides that it shall be the duty of every citizen to declare his income honestly to the appropriate and lawful agencies and pay his tax promptly. You will see from this section of the Constitution that tax payment is a fundamental requirement on every citizens and entities within the country. So as such, individuals and businesses are also required to comply with several key tax laws, including but not limited to the Companies Income Tax, Value Added Tax Act, and the Personal Income Tax Act. Now, for employers and employees, who are the primary focus of our discussion, are guided by the regulatory framework of the Personal Income Tax Act, TAP P8 LFL, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, as amended, which clearly spells out the requirements for compliance and penalties otherwise. So, and addendum, compliance is not just a legal necessity, but also a foundation for maintaining the integrity and trustworthiness of your business. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, reputation and trust. Enhance reputation. By complying with tax regulations, this will demonstrate that your business operates with integrity and transparency. This boosts your firm's reputation, making it more attractive to customers, investors, and partners. Also, it enhances the building of trust. That is by maintaining compliance. You build trust with stakeholders, ensuring long-term relationships and a positive public image. So the next slide, please. Financial benefits. Being compliant with tax regulations can make your business eligible for various government contracts and financial incentives. Application for government grants, contracts, and partnerships require proof of tax compliance. Additionally, some tax incentives and reliefs are available only to businesses that meet compliance standards, providing financial benefits and competitive advantages. Go to the next slide. Economic contribution. Taxes play a crucial role in funding public services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. By complying with tax regulations, businesses contribute to national development and the overall well-being of the society. This collective contribution helps create a stable and prosperous economy for the benefit of all. These are just some of the benefits of tax contribution, because the major source of funding of government activities is taxation. And as such, when the citizens comply effectively, we are on a good way to getting the economy set, and also the provision of infrastructure by the government of the different tiers within the country. So, can go to the next slide. Now, there has penalties spelled out in the law for non-compliance, and some of these provisions are stated here. We have for failure to keep appropriate books of accounts, that's in the section 52 of the Tax Act. The penalty is 50,000 naira for an individual and 500,000 naira for corporate bodies. Failure to deduct or failure to remit tax deducted at source, that is for PAYE and withholding taxes, penalty of 10% of the amount not deducted or remitted, plus interest at the prevailing monetary policy rate. That's the rate at which the CBN lend to banks. Now, failure to file returns before the deadline, that is 31st January for employers and 31st March for individuals. The fine is 500,000 naira for corporate bodies and 50,000 naira for individuals, or an imprisonment term of 6 months. Counterfeiting or falsifying tax clearance certificate or other tax documents. The fine is 50,000 naira or imprisonment for 3 years, or both. General penalty for offenses where no specific penalty is provided. The fine is 20,000 naira or imprisonment for 6 months, or both. Where the offenses is failure to furnish a return or keep records, a further 2,000 naira for every day of default. Now, penalty for making incorrect returns, 50,000 naira for individuals and 500,000 for corporate bodies, or to imprisonment for not more than 6 months. Penalty for making false statements, penalty of 50,000 naira for individual and 500,000 naira for corporate bodies, or imprisonment for not more than 6 months. Obstruction of tax officers in the performance of their duties. This is very, very key and important, because there are cases where, out of ignorance or sheer malice, some taxpayers or organizations would do everything to obstruct the job of the taxman, who is by law empowered to, within the working hours, come into premises to ask questions. The penalty is 5,000 naira or imprisonment for 6 months or both. This is just few of the penalties that are made, the provisions are made in the law. However, it is not exhaustive, and for the purpose of this presentation, our attention is not really on penalties, but how we can mitigate and avoid situations that will arise where penalties will be levied by the tax authority. So our conversation should be focused on what best the taxpayer should do to avoid even having penalties as a result. So further to that, I'll just say in addendum, failure to comply with tax regulations can result in significant fines, interest on unpaid taxes, and potential legal action. Such penalties can severely impact a company's financial health and reputation. Ensuring compliance helps avoid these costly disruptions and maintain business stability. Because in the course of my professional life, I've had cause to interact with lots of employers of labor, and my result has always been that when you comply, you are focused on your core object, which is to render services and make profit, which is, I believe, we all should focus on. So we can go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Understanding tax obligations. Tax obligation refers to the legal duty of an individual or entity to pay taxes to the government. This duty arises from the income from sales or other taxable activities or assets they possess. In Nigeria, we have various types of taxes. It includes income tax, value-added tax, capital gain tax, petroleum profit tax. There are a series of taxes that are collectible by different tiers of government and also different institutions. However, what is important is that staying abreast of your obligation as a business entity is very, very key and important. So, meeting tax obligation involves accurate reporting, timely payment, and adherence to relevant tax laws and regulations to avoid payment of penalties and also its legal consequences. We can go to the next slide, please. So, how to comply with tax regulations. To ensure compliance with personal income tax regulations, for instance, businesses should follow several key steps. This include, but is not limited to, the following. For instance, when you set up a business, the usual thing is that you must first incorporate the business by relating to, or perhaps using a consultant to get your business registered with CAC. So equally, the tax obligation also involves you being aware of what are the regulatory requirements for you to carry on a business, and also the attendant payments that should be made as and when due, because it's very, very important to also ensure that timeliness in reporting and payment is maintained. So for registration, for instance, for PAYE, an employer of labor are required to log on to the etax.lrs.net. I must say at this point that the etax is a tax platform developed by the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service for wholesale tax payment and also registration. It is an enterprise system whereby you can start from registration up until when you start making payments. Very interactive and it's user friendly. So you register on the eTax platform, you submit the documents to the nearest tax office also, because the regulation, as much as a tax payment is a function of the law, there's also regulations, for an employer of labor to follow. And some of the regulations with regards to PAYE is that as an employer of labor, you need to first register with the tax authority by the virtual etax.lrs.net. You do all activities there, but however, you still need to submit some signed documents to your nearest tax office. And for good measure, the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service have 39 tax stations spread evenly across the state, while also we have mini tax stations also to cater for the interest of those on the lower side of the tax ladder. So you will need to provide a letter of application for PAYE registration on your company's letterhead. You need a copy of your certificate of incorporation and also the articles and memorandum of association. You need a copy of Form CAC 2 and 7, that's for shareholders and also for directors and subscribers to the articles and memorandum of the business. Evidence of at least 2 directors' tax payment with a notice of assessment. Then the copy of the company's payroll showing the name, designation, salary, and allowances of all employees. Evidence of payment of business premises and development levy, respectively. Then also the copy of the lease agreement and rent receipt for office space where the property is not owned by the business. So for remittance, you do monthly remittance as an employer of labor since salaries are paid on a monthly basis. So for monthly remittance, employers must remit deducted PAYE tax on or before the 10th day of the following month through the eTax platform, accompanied with schedules. Also, for annual returns, the requirement is that employers must log on to the eTax platform to file an annual return. That's from H1 of all emoluments paid to employees on or before January 31st of the following year. For self-employed individuals or persons under direct assessment, must also file returns of income on or before March 31st of each year and make payments according to the adequate assessment raised in line with provisions of the Personal Income Tax Act. I would say at this junction that for the annual returns, for us to really have a good understanding of what annual returns is, it's simply a way of accounting to government the taxes that was deducted in the immediate past year from the employees, because by monthly remittance, payments are made in the name of the company, while the individuals whom the taxes are deducted from are not known to the tax authority except when you file returns. Because also when the employees need tax clearance, then it is the returns filed that will form the basis to identify who paid what and what the salaries are in the immediate past year. And this must be done before the end of first month of January, that's the 31st day of January, while the latter part of it that deals with the individuals is also telling us as an individual who is resident within the state and you make income, you are expected to file your income returns on or before the 31st of March of each year. And by returns, we are saying your income for the immediate past year should be the basis for tax payment in the current year. While for withholding taxes, withholding tax must be remitted to the state tax authority within 30 days from the date of the transaction or payment. But for FIRS, the limit remains 21 days, while with the state, it is usually by the 30th day of the following month. So withholding tax returns must also be filed monthly in the specified format provided by the relevant tax authority. The Joint Tax Board withholding tax platform have been created to ease compliance obligation with all the 37 RTAs. That's 6 states plus Abuja. Now, business premises levy, 10,000 naira is payable in the year of registration, while 5,000 naira annually is paid by all businesses operating within the state as a renewal. It must be paid within the first 3 months of the year, while development levy of 100 naira is levied on every staff and every individual that are taxpayers resident within every state in the country. And this is payable annually. Now, by following these steps, business can effectively navigate the complexities of tax compliance and avoid potential pitfalls. Please, next slide, please. Now, benefits of timely filing and payment. Avoidance of penalties and interest. Timely filing and payment help avoid late fees, penalties, and interest charges that can accumulate rapidly and significantly increase the total tax burden. Legal tax compliance. Ensuring that taxes are filed and paid on time keeps individuals and businesses in good standing with tax authorities, reducing the risk of tax investigations and legal actions. Enhanced reputation. Consistently meeting tax obligations on time can enhance the reputation and credibility of a business with stakeholders, including customers, investors, and also financial institutions. Now, next slide. And 21st century tax administration would realize that the place of technology cannot be overemphasized because technology has significantly enhances tax compliance by providing efficient, secure, and user-friendly solutions. It also drives compliance by itself because it's machine and it follows instructions strictly. So human interaction is limited where technologies are employed. So the LRS also have been introduced the Enterprise Tax Administration System, which is known as e-tax, which is to simplify and enhance tax administration in the state. The e-tax is a digital end-to-end multi-channel solution for tax filing and payment. The system was built with capabilities for the following: tax registration with unique payer ID. By tax registration, we are saying that in the case of an individual who is resident in the state, you are requested to have your own individual payer ID, while the organization which acts as an agent to government, it equally would have to register itself and have its own corporate ID. So that's for registration. For tax calculation, filing of assessment, tax payment, and processing of treasury receipts, all of these are activities that you can carry on the e-tax platform. It has inbuilt tax calculator for estimated self-assessment. It has the capacity for raising of objections, assessment details, and objection status. It monitors all of this. It serves the notification of taxpayer assessment, audit reports, and liabilities. It has a capacity for online annual returns filing for both individuals and corporate taxpayers, instant issuance of revenue receipts where payment is initiated and made. You could easily print your receipts on the e-tax platform. It has the ability to upload monthly PAYE schedule, which is a requirement for employers of labors. When you pay tax, you should equally upload the details of the employees from whom the taxes were deducted. So by this, you can monitor what your employee, as an employee, you can monitor what your employer deduct and remit on your behalf. Now, it also has capacity for payments and printing out of receipts. It has the ability to upload withholding tax schedule with receipts, and also you can view your withholding tax credits. Next slide, please. In conclusion, Adherence to personal income tax regulations is crucial for legal compliance and financial integrity. Timely filings and payments to avoid penalties, ensure accurate reporting, and maintain a positive relationship with tax authorities. You leverage technology such as LRS's e-tax system, further enhances tax administration by streamlining processes, improving accessibility, and reducing cost of compliance. By understanding and embracing these practices, we can foster a more efficient and compliant tax environment. So, I want to, at this juncture, have the slide up there that you can reach out to LRS for more information, inquiry, or complaints. We have our head office, we have our online presence, which is https://lrs.gov.ng or the https etax.lrs.net. We have a call center. The phone number is right up there, and we have a presence on all social media. You can chat with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The addresses are there, or you could equally send email to reach out to LRS. We're just on the same page with taxpayers for ease of tax compliance, payment, and equally for grievance resolution. I must thank the organizers of this event. Thank you for creating this avenue to be able to reach out to both the employers and the tax public. We can have our questions and answers. And I say thank you once again to the DG NECA and every person on this platform today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tijani, for your presentation. It was very insightful. And you particularly mentioned how people can be compliant in respect of their tax obligations. Thank you. Thank you. Please, we would want you to stay on the call for the interactive session. And please, participants, you can drop your questions in the chat box. So when it's time for the interactive, we're able to read it out to the speakers. Thank you very much, Mr. Tijani. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next on the agenda, we'll be having the presentation from, sorry. The agenda will be having the next topic, which is complying with data privacy regulations, which is going to be taken by Dr. Olatunji, National Commissioner, National Data Protection Commission, and is represented by Mr. Babatunde Bamiboye Esquire, Head, Legal Enforcement and Regulations, Nigeria Data Protection Commission. Mr. Bamiboye, you have the floor, sir. Thank you. Mr. Bamboye, can you hear me, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yes, on behalf of the National Commissioner, Nigeria Data Protection Commission, Dr. Vincent Olatunji, I'm going to represent him this morning. We bring you good tidings from him and from the Commission as a whole. So just give me a minute. Let me bring up my slide. Yes. Can you see my slide, please? Please, can you see the slide?
Yes, sir, we can. Yes, I can see.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it is an exciting opportunity for us to be here this morning to talk more about data protection and regulatory requirements for MSMEs. And we want to thank the DG NECA for this opportunity. It demonstrates the interest that the agency has in, empowering and building the capacity of this very crucial sector. Now, Dr. Vincent Olatunji is the National Commissioner of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. He's the pioneer National Commissioner, actually, and we call him the new sheriff in town. He's a fellow of Institutes of Information Technology, Information Technology Management, and he is also a certified data protection officer. He holds a PhD in geography, and he has at some points acted as a DG of NITDA before his appointment just in 2022 as the National Commissioner of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. This morning, we are looking at the compliance requirements for MSMEs in the area of data privacy and protection. Why is this very important? It is important because MSMEs are the most vulnerable. They are just like the data subjects, the average data subjects. They constitute a segment of the society that we regard as very vulnerable when it comes to data privacy and protection, and particularly cyber security. For instance, there was a report by NIPS in 2020 rather, that there was 46,126 attacks on systems, and over 41,000 of these was successful, representing 91%. The real vulnerable segments of this, you will agree with me, are the MSMEs and the individuals, the data subjects. Businesses generally that are less than 200, that have less than 200 employees, they lose an average of $2.5 million every year, that is individually. You can consider the financial burden of this on MSMEs, what they could have used maybe to develop for research and development, or even to improve their businesses, they end up trying, to address or to remedy data breaches. Nigeria saw 64% increase in data breach incidents during the first quarter of 2023. And MSMEs are particularly vulnerable due to limited resources for robust cybersecurity measures. Many MSMEs lack adequate cybersecurity awareness and training, making them easy targets. Therefore, it is this seminar this morning is really very important, and I want to believe that participants will pay attention to it. So what are we actually talking about when we talk about data privacy and protection? We are talking about the protection of personal data. These are in two categories. You have the non-sensitive personal data, then you have the sensitive personal data. For non-sensitive personal data, they could be described as things such as name, your date of birth, your social security number, as it were. These are your personal data, driver's license, passport, national ID, address, and all of that. Then the sensitive personal data, usually your health record, genetic information, ethnic or racial origin. But let me warn that even for non-sensitive personal data, it depends on the circumstances. For instance, if they mention your name, which is ordinarily a non-sensitive personal data, they mention it in certain circumstances, maybe outside your usual environment, maybe it's a volatile environment, they just hear your name, that name may be sensitive enough that, oh, that this person is from this particular area, so it becomes a target. So whether a data is sensitive or whether it is not sensitive, we should treat all of them with almost equal level of protection, taking into account the environment in which we operate. Now, what is data privacy? Data privacy is the right of an individual to informational self-determination as recognized under applicable laws. And the first of these is Section 37 of the 1999 Constitution, and then the Nigeria Data Protection Act. In other words, informational self-determination means your right to be able to control the data that is related to you as an individual. And we have mentioned those categories of data earlier. You have a right to control how it is collected, how it is processed generally. Now, what is data protection? This refers to the technical and organizational measures taken by individuals or organizations that collect or process data to ensure that personal data is accessible only to authorized users for authorized purposes and in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. What do we mean? Now, if you maybe go to the Section 37 of the Constitution, it says the privacy of citizens, their homes and correspondence is hereby guaranteed and protected. What we are saying in effect is that when there is a right to privacy, there is an obligation to respect or to protect that privacy. The law recognizes two categories of obligations here. The first is the positive obligation to protect. The second one is the negative obligation, that is the obligation not to interfere with privacy. So at every point in time, even as we are not interfering with privacy, we also have obligation to protect privacy. So these are two obligations we need to take into consideration when we talk about data privacy and protection as required under Section 37. As MSMEs, we are data subjects ourselves. That is, the proprietors of MSMEs, the directors, we are data subjects. And then our customers are also data subjects of our companies or our firms or our enterprises. Therefore, every measure that we put in place must also take into account yourself as an employee of the organization that you own, as well as your data subject. But you know that your real liability will come as a result of those who come from outside and claim that you have violated their rights to privacy. Now, what is the benefit of compliance? The first is trust. For instance, if you want to buy something from as an MSME, somebody wants to buy something from you or wants to engage you to do something, and then is going to transfer money to you. He wants to be sure that he's transferring the money to the right person and is engaging with the appropriate entity. And also, if you are buying something as well, you want to be sure that you are transacting with the right person. This brings identity into issue. And that at the end of the day, when I even give you my data, for instance, let's say a business center, I have come to do copies of maybe my CV. And at the end of the day, I want to trust that doing this CV, doing these copies of my credentials in your organization will not compromise my data. You will not use it unlawfully. Maybe you operate a cyber cafe. I want to open my system. The only reason why people go to cafe maybe to open system in those days, particularly, is because there is a sense of belief that the cyber cafe will not use some backdoor means to enter into those to enter other people's accounts. And there are so many other levels where trust is required. Now, if you don't protect data, that becomes a problem and people are unable to transact business with you. Then compliance with the act. You can imagine If you do not comply with the act, apart from the legal liability, which we'll come to very quickly later, there are also, I mean, the liability that comes from the commission. There is also the liability that comes from the data subjects whose rights you have violated. So it helps you to comply with the act, then it prevents breaches. We have mentioned earlier the loss that MSMEs particularly are vulnerable to in this ecosystem. So complying with the act or complying with data privacy and protection regulations generally helps in preventing data privacy. And you can imagine also it gives competitive advantage. You see a situation, maybe there are people bidding for a contract, and one is able to maintain data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the other cannot guarantee data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You can be sure that is the company or MSME that guarantees that a CIA that will be, get the customer or get the clients, as the case may be. Then there is operational efficiency. Data governance, data powers everything. This is the fourth industrial revolution. So if you are able to do what, for instance, maintain the 5 V's of data in terms of its value, in terms of its variety, in terms of its volume, in terms of its velocity and veracity. You have these 5 V's covered in your operations. That means your operational efficiency will be top-notch. They are asking for something because of the velocity in the system that you have put in place, or the variety or veracity. You are able to provide the best in that regard. So what are the principles of data processing and data protection generally? There must be lawfulness. There must be a legal basis under which you process data. Is it the consent of the data subject? Is it based on contract? Is it based on the vital interest? Because of time, we may not be able to explain each of these lawful bases, but I think we'll share the slide with NECA, and then you would have access to, the resources. But of course, data minimization, we may just hammer on just two, maybe purpose limitation and data minimization. What is purpose limitation? It means that when you collect data from a data subject, your customer, your clients, as the case may be, make sure that you are only using it for the purpose for which you have collected the data. You don't collect the data for a particular purpose or an agreed purpose with the data subject and begin to use the data for other purposes that is not in the expectation of the data subject at all. Then data minimization, it means that collect only the data that you required and no more. Do not collect any other data other than that which is necessary for you to achieve your business objective. Now, lawfulness is also important to talk about transparency. Make sure that in all of this, you are transparent. There is another aspect which is about duty of care, and I think it speaks to all of this, that you should be conscious, you should maintain a very high standard of care when we talk, pardon me, when we talk about data privacy and protection, and be accountable at all times. Now, but all of these are in the Nigeria Data Protection Act, Section 24 and Section 25 of the Act, and it's available on our platform. You may want to consult you consult it, and even if you need the services of lawyers and DPCOs to help you understand the Nigeria Data Protection Act, that would be fantastic. Also, we organize seminars around this understanding of Nigeria Data Protection Act. You can always take advantage of that as well. So what are the obligations generally of the MSMEs? You are expected, one, to develop a privacy policy, and that speaks to transparency. Let people know, especially those that use systems, automated systems to process data, or you maintain a CCTV, just a very small CCTV in your shop. You need to let people know that you are having a CCTV in this place. So data privacy policy is good. That explains everything. That your data governance practices is in there for people to see. Then you process data in line with the principles that I have mentioned earlier, and designate a senior officer as a data protection officer of your firm. I assume that many of those MSMEs, but many are big enough to be able to designate. But where you operate as an individual, that means you assume the responsibility of the data protection officer in that regard, and you can as well outsource these services to others. But internally, yes, you operate as that. Then if you have the means, there are people that have been licensed by the commission as data protection compliance organizations who can carry out the work of a DPO for you. Then we have people we call data controllers and data processors of major importance. We have a guidance notice that has been issued in this regard. Then if you fall within this category of those, for instance, MSMEs, if you're an agent of a telco, for instance, or that you process for any of the big data companies who process large amounts of data, you qualify. If you keep confidential information of others, you keep their confidential information, and you are in a fiduciary relationship with them, then of course you qualify. But because of our time, we move quickly. We can check our guidance on that. It's available on our platform. Then we have said you can engage a DPCO. This is also very, very key. DPCOs, we operate a PPP model, that is public-private partnership. DPCOs, data protection compliance organizations, can help you with data privacy policy. They can help you with the legitimate interest assessment. That's your lawful basis, one of your lawful basis for processing data. They can help you even in keeping record of your processing activities. They can help you with data privacy impact assessment. They can help you also to draft agreements on data processing or service level agreement relating to data processing. All of this can be done by them, and ultimately they help in filing audit, compliance audits annually, when you fall within the categories of those that are meant to file your compliance returns annually. Then you direct your contractors, those that process data on your behalf, your vendors, your contractors, your agents, as it were, ensure that they are compliant under the act. We are moving very quickly, so we can talk again more about data security as well. You must put appropriate technical and organizational measures in place. Your focus in this is to guarantee data confidentiality, data integrity, and data availability. So it is important for you to be able to, to guarantee all of this when you do your data security. I understand that I have just about 20 minutes to do this presentation, of which I think I have exhausted the 20 minutes, but I believe we have covered certain things that at least are important for you to know, for me to take home and then begin to process for compliance. Majorly, keep in mind that you have to comply with the principles of data protection. You have to have a lawful basis for data processing, and then you need to register with the commission as a data protection, as a data controller or data processor of major importance. The slide will be with the NECA. We have had activities with them, and these are displayed in this slide as a way to demonstrate our interagency cooperation. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to a more robust engagement with this sector. Thank you to the DG NECA and to everyone.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. So we'll move straight into the interactive session. Participants, if you have any question, please don't forget to leave the chat box. Thank you. Okay, we have some questions in the chat box, and I'm just going to run through them. Mr. Bamboy, please, you can stop sharing your screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Comments.
Right. Okay, so I have a question in the chat box, and this is going to go to Mr. Tijani, because the person is asking about the business premises levy, which you had mentioned in your presentation. The question is, is business premises levy calibrated to the size of company with reference to number of employees in the establishment? Mr. Tijani, did you get the question?
Please, can you come back? Can you come again, please?
All right. Okay. My question is business premises levy calibrated to size of company with reference to number of employees in the establishment?
Thank you, moderator.
Yes, sir.
Business premises levy, as the name implies, is a levy. So a levy is a fixed amount that is to be paid. However, given the question asked, business premises levy is just like we said in the presentation that for registration, it is an annual payment of 10,000 naira, while renewal is at 5,000 naira per year. It is independent of number of employees. However, where you have multiple business offices, then you would have to have the levy paid for each of the offices that you have. It has nothing to do with employees. It's only development levy that applies to employees.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. All right. The next question I have here is going to go to Mr. Nasir, because he's asking about the difference between HMO and NHIA. I know you had made mention of this in your presentation, but the person was probably not there when you did that. So the person is asking the difference between HMO and NHIA. Mr. Nasir.
Thank you very much. HMOs are, like the name, like it's an abbreviation for Health Maintenance Organizations. They are like the middlemen between NHI and healthcare providers. Healthcare providers here means the hospitals, the clinics, the maternity, and so on. We don't deal as an organization. We don't interface with them directly, even though they are one of our stakeholders. In terms of payment for the services that is assessed by our enrollees, we pay them through the HMOs, right? For the money for each individual, we have two levels of payment, capitation and fee for service. Capitation, we pay through them based on primary care services that our enrollees need to access at the hospital, right? While the secondary care, which is fee for service, that one is paid retrospectively by also the HMOs. We will have given them both capitated amount and the fee for service before the beginning of the next month, right? So the money goes ahead before the enrollee even access care. That is the beauty of health insurance. So that is their job. And for doing that, they also have to pay them what you call admin.
Can anyone hear Mr. Nasir? Or it's just me?
Am I being heard?
Oh, sorry, we lost you.
Network. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a network issue. But
That's fine.
Gladly, I'm back. Yeah.
All right.
So that is what we pay them for a fee for doing that. In addition to that, right, they also ensure that the quality of care given to our enrollees is maintained based on what is prescribed, right, in the benefit package. They perform that work. The HMO is the next one is healthcare provider, isn't it? No, NHIA. So we accredit them to do those jobs on our behalf. Whereas as an agency, we are the regulatory agencies. And like I said earlier on, there are three things that law has empowered us to do. We are to promote, we are to regulate, and we are to integrate the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nasir, for answering the question. Okay, the next question to Mr. Bangboye, because it's talking about data processors. Question, Mr. Bangboye, is please, how can a business ensure the compliance of data processors beyond having a data processing agreement in place?
All right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Beyond having a data processing agreement in place, that's the question, right? If I heard you.
Yeah.
Beyond having an
Yeah.
agreement, in place.
Yes.
There is something we call privacy by design and privacy by default. That is, for instance, if you were to host your data in a data center, for instance, it is expected that even the configuration of the data center, whoever is going to handle your data for you, it is configured in such a way that it cannot even, it's difficult to actually, infringe on your privacy or to breach your data, the integrity of your data. So privacy by design and by default is really very important in that area. Then again, beyond the agreement, you should be able to ensure there is due diligence. You must be able to ensure that that organization, ab initio, is also compliant in its practices. You have an agreement with an organization that is not even known to law, as as a data processor or as a data controller, as the case may be. So make sure that anyone you want to engage, it's just like saying, I want to engage a driver. Then you have given the driver an employment, like you have given him an employment letter. These are the conditions of how you are going to drive this car. Without actually verifying whether the driver has a driver's license, ab initio. So this also is important. That is in addition to the conditions put in place in the car, which is to ensure the safety of the occupants of the car. That is the design, and the same thing with data privacy and protection as well. So generally, compliance on their part, and then putting technical and organizational measures in place that goes beyond the agreement.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bangboye, someone is asking, can anyone register to be an agent to your organization, just like the way we have agents with CAC and Financial Reporting Council?
Yes, you can, but they are not really called agents. They
Okay.
are called data protection compliance organizations. They are independent of us in a way, because if they are your agents, then we become the principal. Anything they do, they will be doing under our, liability or something of such nature. But that is not how it operates. We license them to operate independently. And then who are those that can be, if you are a law firm, if you are an IT firm, cybersecurity, and all of those fields, or management firm. And then you have officers that are qualified as data protection officers in those firms. Then, of course, you can be a data protection compliance organization.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bangboye. So, Mr. Nasir, somebody is asking, I want to know why private pharmacies are not part of your stakeholders. In the course of your presentation, you had mentioned various stakeholders you've been engaging and working with. This person is asking why private pharmacies are not part of the stakeholders you had mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you very much. I can quickly answer that. For our colleagues, the pharmacists, yes, it's been a major concern within the industry. The questions have been asked on and on, because they're in their participation, they are supposed to participate, right? When it comes to the component of drugs, right? But what has happened is that now the drug component has been capitated as part of the care, overall care. But the system now is trying to unbundle that. When we unbundle it, it will open that the pharmaceutical sector, or our pharmacies, who also, because the system look at them as providers also. once we are able to unbundle the capitation, the work is currently ongoing, then people can then go to hospital and go to pharmacy of their choice, either within the hospital or outside the hospital, to get their drugs. And that is being worked on. And as soon as that is done, the public will be sensitized. Our colleagues in that section will also be sensitized on what to do. Thank you very much. But
Yeah, all right, sir.
another addition, just before I go on that, and in addition to that, if I look at the guideline, clearly their roles are mentioned and their responsibilities are clearly mentioned, right, in the operational guideline. Thank you very much.
All right, sir. So another question for you. What is the position of the NHIA as it pertains to companies resorting to retainership as a means for to access healthcare, especially with experiences of employees not accessing healthcare under the HMO arrangements? Did you get that, sir?
Okay, if I hear you correctly, is that what's the position of NHIA, right? On
Yes.
employees taking health insurance from private health insurance from HMOs.
No. What is the position of the NHIA pertains to companies resorting to retainership as opposed to HMO?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Yeah, it's an excellent question. We have not just few companies, several companies who are in retainership and they are not on private health insurance, whether social or private health insurance. But the law is clear. It's clear and it's as straightforward as a straight line that everybody must come on board health insurance, isn't it? Mandatory health insurance in Nigeria. So, and the law also provides that if you think the benefit package that is being offered by the social health insurance in Nigeria is not okay for you, I mentioned that because of my presentation, such organization can take supplementary health insurance for their what's it called, employees. Because there are some organizations, for example, even in among the MDAs, ministry, departments, and agencies will say that they want to provide full cover, right, for their staff, even including the staff being flown abroad. It is allowed, but we don't do that in social health insurance. So what they do is that they will take complementary health insurance to cover that. So in the course of enforcing what's it called, mandatory health insurance in Nigeria, the details will be unbundled, and I think we will understand. It's still a work in progress for now. Very soon there will be clarity for everybody to understand. But everybody, as the law has said, must come on board social health insurance.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Tijani, I have two questions for you that I'm just going to run through quickly. The first one is an enterprise like a sole proprietorship supposed to pay taxes differently from its owner? That's the first question. And the second question is, personal income tax rates provided online for paying computation, is it for annual or for monthly? Did you get the question, sir? Mr. Tijani, are you here, please? Okay. If Mr. Tijani is not here, Mr. Bangboye, somebody is asking, as a food processing establishment, we need to obtain the medical records of our staff. How do we handle the medical data since it's sensitive data? Should they be made to grant consent?
Please, can you repeat the question?
All right. As a food processing establishment, we need to obtain the medical records of our staff. How do we handle the medical data since it's among sensitive data? Should they be to grant consent?
Yes, you
There's a
will
bit of
need
internet issues here.
consent. And I must also say that this
Can I go on?
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Sorry.
as a
Can you just
food process. Pardon?
Yeah, Mr. Bangboye, yes, you can go on, please.
Now, the issue is this. As an organization, what you need actually is a certificate of medical fitness. A certificate of medical fitness taking into account the business you are into. is this person, for instance, the type of medical fitness certificate that you need your organization may be different from another organization because you handle things you don't want it contaminated. So you let your clinic know that, yes, this is our concern. And then the clinic or the hospital will be able to give certificate that this person is capable. But if you now connect the record, the raw record, and keep, you are putting yourself under a very strict obligation to protect that. Number one, you require the consent in all situations. Number two, the measures you have to put in place to keep that data is also very high. And then if there is any breach, your liability is also higher. So we advise, that is where the issue of data minimization comes in. Do you need actually the raw record, the diagnostic record, and all of that kept in your HR, who is not a competent medical personnel, or you need just a certificate saying that this person can work in this type of environment? So this is even the message we are taking to other organizations as well. Require only medical fitness. Don't keep medical records with HR who are not medical personnel and may not understand the sensitivity of this type of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Bangoye. So the last question that I asked Mr. Tijani earlier, I guess he had some sort of network issues. So Mr. Tijani, the first question is an enterprise sole proprietorship, as in sole proprietorship, is an enterprise supposed to pay taxes differently from its owner? And the second question is, the personal income tax rate provided online for payee computation, is it for annual or for monthly? We've lost Mr. Tijani. All right. So that brings me to the end of the interactive session because of time. So would enjoy participants to put on their videos so we can take pictures. Participants and speakers can put on their videos for picture purposes. While we do that, I would call on Adenike Adebayo Ajala, Director of Social and Labor Affairs, for the closing remarks. Thank you. Mrs. Ajala.
Thank you, Tommy. I hope I'm audible.
All right, yes, thank you.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma, we can hear you.
Okay. I would like to use this. It's unfortunate that the internet did not allow us to hear the last words from Mr. Tijani, but we encourage our esteemed participants to please follow all the regulators on their social media platforms and also engage with them, stating their questions, and I'm sure that they will respond as they have promised. I would like to use this opportunity to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for waiting to the end of this session. I especially want to thank our wonderful facilitators, Tijani, for being here with us, explaining to us what our obligations are as businesses and what would happen if we fall short of the law. We as NECA preach compliance, and we would like to encourage everyone to be compliant so that we do not have to face all those penalties that they had highlighted in their various presentations. The presentations will be sent to all of us. We have your data. We'll send it to you via email. Don't worry, Mr. Bamigoye, we will not breach any data privacy law. In sending it, we'll make sure that everybody's data is well hidden. They will only receive the information. So thank you very much for being with us today. We encourage you to please stay up to date with NECA via our social media handles so that you can continue to be part of our various knowledge sharing sessions such as this one. We have one coming up very shortly on the national minimum or living wage. That will take place on August 28th. And it's also a free webinar, and we encourage everybody to also be part of it so that we can address all those burning issues, all those knotty issues we may have concerning the national minimum wage. Once again, on behalf of our Director General, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyeride, I want to say thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to you joining us at another interactive session. Thank you very much indeed. Please stay up to date with all our activities, all our programs, like I said, via our social media handles. Thank you very much, and have a very good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes, the materials will be sent to your respective emails. Thank you. Oh, yeah.